Okay, I have my recorder on. We are good to go. You should see my Google Drive screen, hear me, and incredible bonus, see me in the upper right-hand corner. Um, so here we go. Ask questions in the window at any time, and um, I do have a handout that I will email you guys after this is over that kind of summarizes a lot of what I hope to talk about. Obviously, we could veer off course a little bit or whatever. So, obviously, I know that you all use Google Drive to some extent, but so you may hear some things you already know. I want to start with a pretty basic thing, and that is search. And we're going to talk about folders versus not folders versus all sorts of things, but I think most people do use search at least to some degree. I don't really notice anybody anymore who doesn't do that. But there's a point I want to make about searching. Okay. So when you go into the search box and you want to find something, think about what I can search here real quick. Web store. Okay, so when I type something in, it gives me a drop down list of choices. So you guys see all this. Unfortunately, there seems to be a tendency to kind of assume that that's what your choices are. I mean, there's not even a scroll. So there's kind of this assumption that this all there is here. And that's not at all the case. This is more, I don't even totally know their logic for this, but this is their, like your most recent documents accessed that meet this criteria. And some other logic I don't even really understand. So instead, what you really want to do is type it and immediately hit enter. Don't, I mean, it's fine to do it that way the first time, and if you find it, great. But otherwise, I would back it up a couple letters, type the search term that you want, and press enter because you're going to get a much more thorough list. Look at that. I'm getting a lot more documents than I got on just the drop down. So you do not want to assume that when you type something into the search box, just that little drop down of things is all there is. Because I just so many times somebody said, "Oh, I can't find the document; it's not there." And the truth is, you just didn't do kind of like a full search, so it's there somewhere. Also, just to make a general point about the searching, um, let's see if I can find real quickly just an example of this one. I have to go a little bit further, I suspect. Um, Yeah, I picked a bad term for this one in a way because all of these so far pretty much have the word web store in them. But your search, the documents that are found, it's searching the contents and the title of the document. It's not just searching the document names. So I can find, you'll notice it also found like web space store, web store. I'm going to do a different search term. I don't know if I still have this in here or not, but I'm going to search the word pickle and I'm going to hit enter. I used to embed a couple documents that had the word pickle in them just to kind of make a point. We'll see if it can, I don't know if I still have them here or not, to be honest. It's been a while. It's having to look pretty hard for that one. So we'll see. This was like years ago that I did this, so they're going to be some pretty old documents that haven't been accessed in a long time. Okay, yeah, here's some interesting ones. Here is one that clearly doesn't have that in the name of it, all of these. Kate's search example, that's probably the document that I actually did do. So if I open that one up, I'm betting it will have, yep, pickles are tasty. So my proof that it does show you it does, I'm sorry, not show, search the contents of a document, not just the document title itself. I'm going to go ahead and close that. Now, if you wanted only to search the title or you needed to narrow down that search a little bit more, the next thing to talk about with searching is the drop down itself. So when you are in this box, I'm going to start the search over, pickle. When I click the down arrow over here in the right hand corner, then I can narrow this search down much, much more. So I can say I can pick a type of document. I could say that I knew that it was in a text document, in which case, um, that's not going to give me like some of the spreadsheets and everything that were at the beginning of this. Um, Actually, you know what? We're going to switch from pickle. We're going to go back to web store. All right, so I'm searching for the word web store, and okay, that did not. I'm seeing one here that I didn't expect to see, but it might have been in there too. Okay, so if I do Eddie, just text dot, oh, they didn't do my search yet. That's why. Okay, that makes more sense. Okay, so now I see it. Because now look at the blue. I only see text documents. Okay. I, again, these all kind of unfortunately have the word web store in the title so far, but if we kept going down, I would find some that don't, for sure. So, this box is very powerful if you're not already using it. I certainly don't use it every time, but I really do when I just know something's going to be harder to find or I'm not finding what I expect to find. So definitely go in here. Another one is owner. So if you know that you are looking for something somebody else shared with you, then you can narrow this down considerably by saying, I want it to be owned by a particular person or only the things I own, for instance. Because if you look at this list, there are different owners in what's being found. So if I narrow this down to owned by me and I do the search, now we're only going to get documents that I own. So it's going to kind of declutter a little bit, which is very helpful when you're really trying to narrow it down. Also notice, I don't know that I really recommend this, but that it is building a phrase as you use the drop down list. So if you wanted to, you could type something in up here in exactly this format and get what you're looking for instead of using the drop down. Probably one of the few things where I think the drop down is easier than the typing. The one time I will put something else in here is if I'm looking for a document someone else shared with me, then for instance, let's say I look for anything shared by Temple. So these are all things owned by him. They're not even necessarily shared with me. They could be anybody. Or Donna, for instance. I saw her name on the list. So I would just type in a D128 email address generally, and it will assume I'm looking for that person as an owner. Then if I wanted to narrow it down, I could, it's not going to narrow it down much given what we do, but now these would only be documents that contain the word Power School in there. And then if I wanted to, I can narrow it down further by type or whatever. The other one, let me just call your attention to one other thing that is kind of nice, is a date range. So that can kind of be another useful thing that you can include in your search, is actually looking for something either in one of these categories, or maybe you're looking for something that you did last spring and you don't want to funnel through a million documents that have worked on since then. So you can actually give a date range for the last time it was modified. So that's another one that can be pretty powerful. So again, I'm going to go ahead and just close this, but I wanted to make sure that you're aware of that one. Oh, one more point. Remember when I said the search was looking in the contents of the document or actually at the title of the document? That's because by default, the search went into the has the words box, but you can also specifically switch this so that it is really up in the item name. And then it will have to have that word specifically within the name of the document, which is narrowing that down hugely here, probably because I think we typically would abbreviate that PS. So really, I've got a lot less stuff in here that meets that criteria. So, and that's usually your goal, is narrowing something down sufficiently. I guess you're going both directions. Sometimes you're broadening the search because you're not finding it how you expected, and sometimes you're kind of narrowing it down because there's just too much clutter there to search through. So just kind of a few little points about the search itself. Um, So I'm going to just clear that and go back to having everything and go click on my drive. So I'm just back at what I think of as kind of home base or ground zero. Um, Now, once I'm here, one of the new things I actually do like is kind of this little quick access panel that is coming up here that is showing me the most recently accessed things. Because I do tend to, as I'm working on a particular project, kind of be going in and out of the same things over and over again. So that is actually kind of handy. And it's got the little thumbnail look more and the title shows me the last time I edited. But I do prefer this list view personally, which doesn't mean you have to. That's just a, personal preference thing. And I normally have mine in order by last modified being at the most recently modified, I should say, being at the top of the list. Every so often I might want to sort by name, but not typically. Like that list is just so long. Just name isn't going to really do it for me. Um, Also, just a little trivia point that there's really no compelling reason to worry about this one because we have plenty of storage. But look at the, well, these are folders for the most part. Let me scroll down far enough that I get to some files. Okay, look at the file size. The file size is non-existent. Now there's a couple. Why is there a file size here? Because these are not Google files. Only non-native Google files count against your storage quota. You're not going to run into your storage quota anyway because it's huge, but that is the only thing that counts against you is when you're storing non-native Google files. So look at all that just free storage you're getting that doesn't count against you in the slightest. You'll notice there is a storage indicator over here that shows you how much storage is used. And I'm not going to worry about that one, but I've got plenty of space. So I'm going to go back to my drive. And again, your folders are going to get listed first, followed by your documents in whatever order was specified. So I'm going to get my last modified folders first, and then they sort backwards. And then when I get down to the files, I get my last modified documents first, working backwards. Okay. Next, quick comment. Remember that if you see the little, that's supposed to look like a body, little head, top of the torso there, right? Just pretty much what you see on me today, right? That is telling you that that folder is shared in some way. So if I see just a plain folder, that's a private one, only to me. The folder itself is not shared. Any of these are all shared folders in some way. It is also possible to color code a folder. I'll show you that one in a second, but I don't use that a lot, but it is certainly an option. And now in my drive, obviously I do see all my folders, but typically when I'm going to kind of navigate through that tree a little bit, I don't know, my practice is I tend to like to click the triangle to the left of my drive and see that list kind of fan out over here on the left so that I can go choose what I want. Now, when you look at my list of folders, it's going to make my, one of my bigger pieces of advice seem kind of, I don't know, funny or almost hypocritical because what I'm going to say is I don't use folders a lot. Okay, go ahead and laugh. I don't use folders a lot to purely for the purpose of organization. I don't exactly know how to express this. Um, so I have a lot of categories of things that are not divided into folders. I have a lot of projects that don't even have their own folder. And probably a few that do, I will be the first to admit, because I rely extremely heavily on search. What I tend to use folders for a lot is helping to manage sharing and to make sharing less burdensome. Because if I have a folder that is a shared folder, when I create a new document in that folder, it's automatically going to get its share settings from the folder, which means I don't have to go back and remember all the people that I need to share it with because it's whoever's on that folder in the first place. We're going to come back to that thought a little bit. We're going to look at a couple more things on this view first. and then we're going to go back to folders. So the one quick thing I wanted to say on the view, I said I prefer this list view, but definitely most of you probably are aware of this idea that there is a grid view, and that is this little grid button here. So I can click that, and that will toggle me over to the grid view. And grid view, give it a second here. Grid view, these are just folders, so there's not much to see. But when I get down to the documents, grid view is actually letting me kind of, if I had several documents with the same name, it would be a lot easier in grid view to tell which one I would need to open because they are, visible enough. I can't read the words, but I can see the structure. Like I can already tell this is a text document, this one here, and this is a spreadsheet by the symbols, but it's also extremely clear with these grid thumbnails. Okay. So that can be kind of handy. I run into a lot of people who really just prefer to work in this mode. I don't. I feel like I can't get quite as much on the screen, and I don't know, for me, it's almost like a little overwhelming, a little too much, but it's certainly an option. So that's the toggle back and forth. Also, going to mention, I'm going to put my mouse over here. You're all my witnesses. Here's where my mouse is, right? I'll put it hovering over the search box, right? You see my little I-beam there? Okay, so now I'm going to use my keyboard, and I'm going to press the V key, V as in, I don't know, vertical, because my list is now vertical. How about that? That's your memory trick, okay? And so I'm back on the list view again. If I press V again, it's going to toggle me back to the grid view. And so, if you like keyboard shortcuts, great. If you don't, also great. I'm going to mention a couple more of those in a minute. If you're curious or you like keyboard shortcuts, you can actually do the question mark key. I don't know where my brain went for a minute there. So you need shift. So it would just be like you were typing a question mark. So shift and the question mark key will give you a list of the keyboard shortcuts that you can use in Google Drive. Okay, and there are quite a number in here. I'm just going to cancel that with my escape key on my keyboard. So at any time, you could just type, when you're out looking at Drive, you could just type the question mark button and get a list of shortcut keys. Now, what I also want to show you just while I'm talking about shortcut keys, this might be your thing, it might not. If I wanted to create a new document, just a new text document, okay? Normally you would go to New, and you would type Google Doc or click Google Docs, and yay, you'll create a document. You can also do Shift T when you're just looking at Google Drive, and that will give you'll be right in a brand new Google Doc. So, yay, you got to skip what, 2 clicks? Or she had to use the keyboard instead. So it's sort of, even. I'm just going to go ahead and just close that. If I haven't done anything with it, it's actually not going to really exist. And then Shift S is for a new spreadsheet. Shift F as in folder is for a new folder. So those are just a couple other little ones, your call if you want to use those or not. Obviously, you can get that functionality other ways. So now let's talk about folders a little bit. And I'm noticing no questions, which is fine, but just because I'm constantly, I gotta move my hand over here, I'm constantly going like this, doesn't mean that you can't toss a question in there and I will see it. Because otherwise, I just keep going, because the weird thing for me about this format is I can't see how you're receiving. I can't see like the eyes glazing over. I can't see any of that. So I will just keep going unless I see a question. So now I want to talk a little bit about folders. Okay, I said I don't really use folders much, and then yes, I have all these folders. So I've created a folder specifically for this particular session. Okay, I wanted to call it FBLA, but I also wanted it at the top of the list so we'd have an easy time finding it during class. So I did put a little hyphen in front of it so that it would alphabetize it to the top. And you'll see I've kind of done some variations on that for some of my others. So I'm going to click on this one to open it. And when I do, you can see that all I've done is I put 2 folders within that one. And I have an 1819 folder and a 1920 folder. Great. And just for total grins, I have actually colored the 1921. Kind of the idea of coloring the one that is active so that if I had a whole bunch, it would just be really easy to see the one that I'm working on, this year. However, let's talk about something right here. What if I wanted to share this 1920 FBLA folder with somebody else in the FBLA activity? When I share it with them, they're going to see a folder with the name 1920. That is not going to be very good information. I see a lot of this with people naming things with just their kind of own perspective in mind, and then not really thinking through how that's going to look when shared with someone else, whether it's a folder name like this or actually a document. So I'm going to, actually, I'm going to click the little triangle to the left of FBLA so you can also see those over here on the left. And then I'm actually going to click on the 1819 folder, which has a spreadsheet in it called roster. Now, this is perfectly logical to me because FBLA 1819 roster makes perfect sense, right? And I'm being efficient in my naming. It's clear. Here's the problem. If I go share this one with, one of you right now in this session, you're going to get this new shared document with the really clear title of roster. Roster of what? So you really would need to I do what I call hierarchical naming. So for me, I'm going to rename this one right now. So I'm just right clicking and I'm choosing rename to just do it right here without even opening it. So really, I would call this FBLA maybe 1819. Okay, I don't really like that naming structure. I'm going to go with this 1819 roster, or the other way around. But again, I'm kind of following the folder structure with that is what I'm doing. So for me, I'm taking the first word, the top level folder, the next level folder, and then the document name. So here you really have top level folder, next level, then this. Now, if I share this with somebody, this is going to have a lot more context and it's going to make a lot more sense. So again, that's a suggestion, opinion. It's not any kind of a hard, cold fact, but having received a few documents from people that are done this way, I can highly recommend it. I'll tell you the other one for me, because I work both buildings. So when I get a document shared with me that says something like AP testing, which building, Libertyville or Vernon? Because I work with both. So even though, most people, and I'm sure people from district office would kind of tell me, would kind of agree with me on that one, it makes perfect sense to people in the buildings not to bother to name their things with like LHS or VHHS in front of them. But when you're working with a broader group, that really doesn't fly, because then those of us who have to deal with both buildings are stuck kind of wondering which one that is. Then you've got to go open it to even be able to tell. I can't just go change the name because I'm changing the name of somebody else's document. So even if they've given me editing rights, I'm not going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to put that on the rude list. So you don't want to do that. So again, I would strongly recommend thorough naming. You will really help out a lot of people that you're sharing individual documents with. Now, the other thing is, it's kind of nice to just share whole folders sometimes, and then that kind of makes that process a little more clear. So I'm going to go to my 1920 folder for a minute here, and I have not created yet a roster document for this year. So I'm going to go ahead and take this folder first before I do anything, and I'm going to share it with a few people. And we're not going to do anything with it, but just so I don't have to think about it, I'm just going to go ahead and hit share, and I'm going to put a couple people that are in this workshop in here. So I'm going to go ahead and put Margaret in here. And actually, since you can't all see each other, I will mention that Margaret is new at Vernon Hills. She just started yesterday. and she will actually be replacing Debbie Lehman, who will be moving in eventually into Peggy Cope's role. So I'm going to share this with Margaret. So, she's mentally waving at all of you and you're all mentally waving at her, right? Since we're not all face to face. Now, I'm going to go ahead and we'll just add a couple more people that I see on the list here. I'm not going to share with Donna. I share with her all the time. Okay, so I'm just putting 3 people in for now. So we have 3 different people I'm sharing with. Obviously, I could add a note and say, you can remove this after class. I could also uncheck and not even notify them, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm just sharing this. What am I sharing? The whole folder with them, and I'm going to send it. Okay. They would get an email. They don't have to go check it. There's absolutely nothing they have to do with this. Notice there's now a head in my little green folder button because I have shared this with people. Now, I'm going to start a new document. So I'm just going to go, I could use my keyboard shortcut, but I'm not going to because I want you to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to do a new sheet. And notice it knows it's a shared folder. So this is not something you'd see on every share, right? Or every create, but it knows that I'm creating it in a shared folder. So it says it's going to have the same sharing permissions as the folder. I say, great idea, create and share. And I'm just going to delete me anytime. Okay, this is how I remember to get rid of these later. So I've made this new document. Now, I've done nothing with it. I've done no shares, but if I go up to my share button, it's already shared with 3 people. And if I click the share to see who those 3 people are, they are the same people I shared with a minute ago. I have to click advance to see the whole list, but there they are. So they have editing rights to that right away. So I'm just going to go back to my drive now. So I've made this new spreadsheet. It's in my shared folder. It's automatically shared with those people. This is what I like about, this is why I use folders so much for sharing. So, for instance, I could have a folder shared with, like data processing in both buildings. So I might have like, Peggy Cope, Jen Shepard, Donna Wormbold, Laura Wolf, and put all them on a folder. And then anytime I create something new in that folder or drop something new in that folder, they're automatically going to have access to it. I don't have to sit there and think about sharing it with them every time. The other way that I do use a fair number of those is I have like this folder called TechZone folders. These are folders that I actually post out on the TechZone, so they're live on the web. So anything I drop into that folder automatically just gets put up on the website. So it just saves me a lot of work, basically. So I use folders more for like the sharing out of things almost than structuring, because otherwise I've got so many documents. I don't want to waste all my time dragging this one here and this one there. It just, for me, that's too much work. However, if I think I'm going to have to share the files with a group of people, then yes, I'm going to bunch them all together, make a folder to hold that, and then share that folder with people. So, just a perspective, those of you who are used to me, that I try to distinguish between my opinion, which can sometimes be a little bit strong, and, more factual information. So again, just emphasizing to have this be a good layout, especially for sharing, I really would want to go back to my 1920 folder, and I can do it with the drop down here, or I could right click over here. I just want to rename it, and I just want to get FBLA in front of it so that if I actually shared just that folder with the group of people that I'm working on with FBLA for 1920, that they would be able to tell when they get the share what that is and when they're looking at it in their own context. Now, that takes me to a really important point. I'm going to close this. So one of the things that I did put in the description for this workshop is a little reference to Shared With Me, which is probably one of the biggest things that I hear people expressing just some frustrations with when they talk about working with Google Drive, is feeling fairly overwhelmed by Shared With Me. I can honestly tell you that the only time I ever even click on shared with me is when I'm teaching a workshop. I literally never go there for good reason, because if I click on shared with me and I just go look at this, okay, so right now I'm in grid view. So let's say I want to toggle that over to list view. So it'll make a little bit more sense. I think that's harder for you guys to read over there, although I'm not sure. So it's just overwhelming for me to go in here and find a specific document that I want would be trying to come up with a good word. It would be stressful. It's too much. You know, every one of these is owned by somebody else. Many of them are just shared, like with all of D128. It's not like I ever got an email about it. I got to be blunt. Most of these I really could care less about. They don't impact me. They don't impact my job function. I don't care. So it's like looking at all this, it's like getting your junk mail when you've been away on vacation for a week or two and you go to the mailbox and it's just like this huge pile of, if you're really lucky, there's going to be one thing in there you want to read, right? It's kind of how I feel about shared with me. So you don't ever have to go to it, because when you do your search up in Search Drive, it includes shared with me in the search. So if you have something there that somebody else shared with you, it'll find it. And you can be more specific, and we already saw how you could do like an owner search. So you just don't need it. Now, if you want to take something like, maybe somebody, we've been using that FBLA example. So maybe somebody in the FBLA group shared a document with me related to FBLA, which probably has happened, but I'm not going to search through this thing to find it. Then what I could do is put that on my drive or add it to my drive. So I'm just trying to find something that won't be this one will work for right now. So this third-party vendors, LHS and BHHS libraries, that is shared with me. I don't own it. Monica Tolba owns it. She shared it with me a few weeks ago, and whatever. So now I want to be able to put that, for whatever reason, in my FBLA 1920 folder. Okay. So what I'm going to do is simply, when I've could do it different ways, but I'm going to open it. And then I'm going to, got to give it a minute to finish loading here. Okay, work a little faster. Okay, so once it's fully loaded, up here there's going to be a folder picture. When I click move, oh, I already filed. Okay, well, you can also check and see where something is. Okay, naturally, I picked a terrible example. Let's go find one more. Okay, there's one that I will not have done. So here's one shared with me. I'm going to, once again, open this. Go to, come on, working. You can see I'm very patient. Still loading. Okay, finally. So what I have up here is an add to my drive, because it knows it's not in my drive. It was shared with me. I have never really actively grabbed it from my side of the world. So I'm going to click add to my drive. It says it's adding it. Then it gives me an organize button. So I'm going to click organize. Then we get the same screen I had a minute ago. So it says it's on my drive. If I want to put it in the FBLA 1920 folder, I'm hovering over FBLA and I'm clicking this right arrow to say I got to go down the path. There's my 1920. With that selected, one click, I click move. And then I say, and it warns you about the sharing. It says, okay, if you drop it in there, that's a shared folder. So now anybody with access to that folder is going to be able to see it. And I can say, okay. So it tells me it did it. If I don't want to wait for that to clear, I can just dismiss it. I'm just going to close this now. So now when I go to my drive and I look at my, I think I did 1920, right? So if I look at my 1920 folder, okay, I lied. Or it hasn't done it yet. Come on. Did I not complete it? Now I don't know. Oh, now I'm going to have to go do this again. Seriously? All right, because I'm lazy. I know it had cab in the title. See if I can just find it that way. Yep, here it is. So here's the cab meetings. Really, it did do it. Okay, not sure why it's not appearing, but that's a good question. Glad it happened now. I'm going to open it. Thought I was opening it. Let's go see what we're seeing here. So let it open it. Still opening. Still waiting to see that folder. And that folder exists in any document you go to, and if you click it, it will show you where it is now. Okay, it even sees that other folder. That is really weird. It's just not refreshing yet. That's all it is. And that is an annoyance I do have with Google Drive sometimes, is it will take a little while to do it. So we'll try to look right at the end, but it's there. Okay, so I'm just going to pull those folders back up. And I know I'm getting towards the end of my time here. See, now it's showing up. It just, for whatever reason, it doesn't always appear immediately. So that's how I can take anything that I can either leave those things in shared with me and just find them with search, which is frankly what I do much of the time, or I can actually say add to my drive, and I can either just let them be in the main drive pile, which is pretty much as cluttered as shared with me, depending on how you do it. And then I can also choose to just organize it into a lower folder. And you can drag and drop things too. So like if this was supposed to be an 1819, I could just drag this to my 1819 folder. And it's letting me know again that I'm changing shared environments. So I'm going to say, okay, that's fine. I know. So now that one is in 1819, or it will be shortly. And so we'll have to give that a minute to appear. But anyway, I've moved it over there. I don't know why the refresh is so slow today. It's kind of annoying. Questions, comments, go ahead and throw those in. Otherwise, another thing I wanted to show you, my few remaining minutes here, is when you're looking at just your general drive list or any folder list, there's another button over here next to that grid view button, which is the view details button. And if you click view details, this has two different tabs. It has a details tab and an activity tab, okay? So I'm going to go to, find a better folder, but okay. So here I have a web store folder, and the activity list, basically it says I edit things because there's a form in here. But I do move things around a little bit. So this is showing the last things that have happened. So Sunday, somebody filled out the form. Sunday, somebody filled out another form. Last week, a lot of people filled out forms. I did have to move some things around. So you can kind of see what's been done. That's kind of nice on a shared folder, just because you can see a little bit more about what others might have been doing, or if you're puzzled about why has this changed, now you can go see some information about that. So if I go look at my responses document, for instance, if these are form responses, I'm going to see the activity on that. The other thing, if I click details, this is kind of nice. You can see who else that folder is shared with. And then I think another big one for a lot of people is that you can see where it is filed. So if if something is a couple folder layers down, now you can kind of see where to find that. So these can be kind of helpful things. So if we went back up to our smaller demonstration of the one that I shared, remember, with 3 people from the workshop. So now we have this FBLA folder, and if I'm on details, I can see who else has access to this folder. So I know who's going to see things I drop in there. And then I can also see what folder that is in. So that can be fairly helpful. What I think is kind of confusing when you're just getting started with really kind of playing with the nuances of some of this, and I strongly suggest finding like a Google Drive Play partner and experimenting with a few things to kind of really get this solid in your mind and actually trust it, which I think is a big thing. So, find a play partner, and I'm happy to do that with anybody. And, create like a shared folder, experiment with dropping something into it that they didn't have access to, see what happens. Experiment, this is another big one. Create a dummy document like my little delete me anytime, and see what happens if you have a document that you've shared with others and you delete it. Or what happens if you have a document that somebody else shared with you and they delete it? I can tell you the answers to these, but you're going to trust them a lot more if you actually walk it through with somebody and you see it. And I do know that I think lack of trust is one of the bigger things that actually gets in the way here. Because I think people are afraid to delete things sometimes because they don't know what impact it's going to have on other people. So, like, this folder that I'm in is shared with these 3 people. That means that this document is shared with these 3 people. And I know I'm pretty much out of time here. And if I delete this document, so I've clicked on it, I'm going to hit the trash can, and it's going to tell me remove one file. One removed file is still accessible by collaborators. That's because it is in my trash. It's not until I take it out of my trash that it becomes inaccessible. That's an important point from another standpoint, which is if you've deleted something so you think people can't get to it anymore, like it's obsolete, you don't want them using the old one or something like that, watch out, because if it's in your trash, they can still access it and they might still think it's valid. And I think the last comment I'll leave you with on that topic, it has to do with that and names, because I would strongly recommend, so I'm going to go back to this folder for a minute. I like to use names when I'm working in a shared environment as kind of a process thing. So I'm going to go back to here. Oh, I removed it. Yes, I'm an idiot. Okay. So I'll go back to here then. So my little FBLA 1819 roster spreadsheet here that really doesn't have anything useful in it. If this was something in a shared folder, but I'm working on the roster and it's not done, then I'm going to actually use my names. And I'm going to do this so that anybody going into the local folder to see if I'm like maybe done, they're going to be like, oh, Kate's working on it, but it's not, I'm not going to waste my time going to look at it because it's not ready. I'm not going to open it and freak out because there's, 50 kids missing. I'm just going to not look at. Then when I'm done, I am simply going to review that, change this name. I mean, I call it whatever I want, but I'm letting people know the status. So, I like to use the naming as a communications form. So I know we're at the limit of the time I published. We did cover the key points that I wanted to. The only thing I didn't really say too much about, and I do plan to talk about this in a later workshop more, is the difference between a shared drive and shared with me. The cool thing about shared drives is that the drive owns the documents instead of people. So, for example, we're doing this year with the FBLA group at Vernon Hills because the frustration with these student clubs is that these kids graduate and then documents they've created kind of graduate with them. Everybody has to start over. Same thing with staff leaving. So by using a shared drive, which we've actually done for FBLA, this one has members on the folder. So it has to be created by a staff member in this case, so the kids can't do it. I own the folder, but when these kids graduate, I'll just remove them. When the new board members come on, I'll add them, and the documents stay intact, and there's no transfer of ownership, there's no sharing, there's no changing is owner. All of this stuff just works seamlessly. So it's a really good place to have some shared items here, which is, you can see we're kind of just really, these are just ones shared with me. Obviously, other people may be using other ones, but, just kind of getting going with this, but it is very helpful. So I'm just going to wrap it here. I'm going to thank you all very much for, coming to the session. And I do have a little summary sheet that I will email out. That's why I tried to pay attention to your and jot all the names down. So I will send you that. If you have any questions, you guys all know where to find me, okay? Thank you very much. Bye.